All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the World Bridge Military Partners podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Johns, CEO and President of World Bridge Military Partners, Air Force veteran, global consultant. I wear a lot of hats, but anyway, wanted to stay consistent with bringing this content to you guys. I was supposed to have a guest on tonight, a bit of a conflict of schedules. So nevertheless, the show must go on. And I've got plenty to go through here with you guys. So I'm solo today. Okay. So what I wanted to do is like double down or dig a little bit deeper into some of the points that I made before, around, I think I did a talk about a month or so ago where I was discussing this potential military recruitment crisis that we're going through or about to go through in our nation. And some of the points that I made in that talk was around the threat to our national security being a little bit different than it used to be decades ago. Okay. And talked about how, and just gave some tips around how the Department of Defense and how our U.S. military should evolve some of their recruitment practices. And I'm not claiming to have all the right answers. I'm just one individual. Yeah, we have a team here. But, some of these challenges are going to take a massive collective effort. So I have some thoughts. A lot of those thoughts are backed by data. I have some ideas. Again, not saying I have all the answers, but I do have some ideas. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into this and talk about this report that I found. Okay. So this is a report released by the U.S. intelligence community. Okay. This is the 2021 annual threat assessment by the U.S. intelligence community. Pretty recent. It was released on April 9th of this year. So I want to get into some of this and give you my thoughts on it, and see what you guys think about some of this, okay? So I'm going to start off like that. So the heading right now is saying major adversaries and competitors are enhancing and exercising their military, cyber, and other capabilities, raising the risk to U.S. and allied forces, weakening our conventional deterrence, and worsening the longstanding threat from weapons of mass destruction. I mentioned to you before that the new threat to our national security, probably one of the largest threats, is cyber. Cyber and chemical warfare, but we're going to focus mostly on cyber today, okay? The military, as you all know, or those that have been in the military or still may be in the military, there's a lot of tradition in the military. And so I'm going to draw some parallels to military life and civilian life, or the military entity, that structure, and private sector corporate structure. Anyone that understands the economy and understands business knows that you can't continue to do business the way that you've always done it if the landscape changes, if the environment changes, if the opportunities shift, right? You think about a lot of the companies that have gone out of business in the last 10, 20 years that just either couldn't or they chose not to adapt to the new environment. And this is part of my concern with the military right now, in some areas, right? I think the military is, quite innovative, technologically advanced in some areas. And then other areas, I think they are bound by tradition and they're very slow to change. Okay. So in this report, it talks about the top threats to our national security. And we're going to deal with 4 major regions or countries, right? So you've got China, you've got Russia, Iran, and North Korea. Those are probably our largest threats. And based on this report, it indicates that these are the largest threats to our safety and national security. So I'm going to break down each one and just give you a few highlights from the report. This is probably a 40 page report, I think, maybe longer. But I just wanted to summarize some of the points around these other threats, right, to national security and just see how this lands with you guys. So we'll start with China. So it says Beijing conducts cyber intrusions that affect U.S. and non-U.S. citizens beyond its borders, such as hacking journalists, stealing personal information, or attacking tools that allow free speech online. Sounds like an attack on democracy, because the rules and the culture that govern China's behavior and their culture are not the same as here, right? So again, these attacks are aimed at some of our democracy. So it says, as part of its efforts to surveil perceived threats to CCC power and tailor influence efforts, Beijing is also using assistance to global efforts to combat COVID-19 to export its surveillance tools and technologies. China's cyber espionage operations have included compromising telecommunication firms, providers of managed services, and broadly used software, and other targets potentially rich in follow-on opportunities for intelligence collection, attack, or influence operations. That's just China, okay? I'm gonna leave Russia for last because they are, from what I can determine and what I can tell, they're probably the largest out of the four threats here, okay? Let's move on to Iran. Iran's expertise and willingness to conduct aggressive cyber operations make it a significant threat to the security of U.S. and allied networks and data. Iran has the ability to conduct attacks on critical infrastructure, as well as to conduct influence and espionage activities. Iran, as most of us know, they were responsible for multiple cyber attacks between April and July of 2020 against Israeli water facilities that caused unspecified short-term effects. So they just don't want to tell us what the effects were. But I'm assuming they were quite significant. Iran is increasingly active in using cyberspace to enable and influence operations, including aggressive influence operations targeting U.S. 2020 presidential election. I think we've heard talk about that too, right? Now let's move to North Korea. North Korea's cyber program poses a growing espionage, theft, and attack threat. They probably possess the expertise, possess the expertise to cause temporary, limited disruptions of some critical infrastructure networks and disrupt business networks in the United States. Judging from its operations during the past decade, it may be able to conduct operations that compromise software supply chains. That is a major, major concern, okay? North Korea has conducted cyber theft against financial institutions and cryptocurrency exchanges worldwide. Wonder how safe crypto is, right? It's all connected to blockchain, decentralized tech, and all that stuff. And at the end of the day, guys, my philosophy has always been this: if man can build it, man can break it, or mankind. I don't want to say man like, gender, men or women, right? Or in between, whatever. Mankind, if we build it, we can most certainly break it, okay? It said they conducted cyber theft against financial institutions and crypto exchanges worldwide, potentially stealing they probably, I think they did, steal hundreds of millions of dollars to fund government priorities such as its nuclear and missile programs. It's interesting, huh? A lot of things have been going on with various crypto exchanges. We got to be careful. And I think a lot of us are. But my question is, from a Department of Defense standpoint, could we be doing more? Maybe not. Again, like I said, I don't have all the answers. I just have some ideas. I just have some thoughts, and I wanted to share them with you guys. So finally, Russia. We know there was a recent cyber attack that was highly publicized on the news. So this is no surprise to most. It says, we assess that Russia will remain a top cyber threat as it refines and employs its espionage, influence, and attack capabilities. Russia continues to target critical infrastructure, including underwater cables and industrial control systems in the U.S. and in allied partner countries. Its ability to damage infrastructure, its proven ability to damage infrastructure during crisis. Russian software supply chain operation in 2020, described in the cyber section of this report, demonstrates Moscow's capability and their intent to target and potentially disrupt public and private organizations in the U.S. Now, I'm not saying that we don't have defense and deterrence around this type of these types of attacks or potential attacks, but it increases the concern for me, knowing the depth and scope of their capabilities. I've read in some reports that they can even impact our military equipment. Military equipment won't do us any good if it doesn't turn on, if it doesn't work, right? So something I want you all to think about. The last statement says the complexity of threats, their intersections, and the potential for cascading events in an increasingly interconnected and mobile world create new challenges for the intel community. So seems to me that the more interconnected we are, think about social media, the applications that we use in our workplaces, it's all interconnected. The more interconnected we are, I look at it as a highway, the more pathways into our infrastructure that exist, the more at risk we are as a nation and as individual households. So could our pursuit for greater convenience, greater speed, and more personalized user experiences, the things that, marketers tell you that we want and we need and we should have, could that desire across these multiple digital platforms actually be creating a greater risk for exposure? Could the social platforms that we engage with on a daily basis be opening us up for catastrophic losses? Again, just something to think about. I don't know if you remember the temporary shutdown of IG, Instagram, Facebook, about a month or so ago. People were losing their minds. I tell you, that's probably going to pale in comparison to what could potentially happen if and when a major cyber breach occurs from one of our foreign enemies. If they're successful, that day-long disablement of those two major social platforms it'll be child's play. My question is this: what would happen if an entire city or an entire state lost access to electricity for days, weeks, or longer? You thought you were going through it when the pandemic hit and we had to go on lockdown. It's nothing compared to what this could look like. if these attacks are successful? What if the use of our military equipment was disabled for an extended period of time? Then what? What would be the risk to our nation and our citizens? What would be the cost to recover from something like that? Might sound far-fetched, but I think it's very, very possible. I don't know how plausible it is, but I think it's very possible. All I can say is God help us if we ever find ourselves in a situation like that. My question is this: what are the proactive measures that we're taking? And again, I'm talking more from a Department of Defense military perspective. I mean, I'm sure we're doing something for sure. But the question is, are we doing the right something? Are we doing enough of the right something? And are we doing it fast enough? Are we reallocating budgets and resources in more of an anticipatory manner based on the intel and data that we possess? Or are we taking more of an arrogant position, which humans do sometimes in all sectors, right? I'm not just the military. I mean, we all, we assume that things are going to be okay, right? Do we assume that the ways that we've deterred threats in the past is good enough? That's the danger. It's the thing that we assume, the things that we don't know that hurt us the most. We got to be mindful of this stuff. How is our military evolving in order to respond to the new threat? I know what we've done for decades. Hell, I was in the military. I know what we did then. What's changed? And again, has it changed enough? And is it changing fast enough? Back to my talk a couple months ago or a month or so ago, my question is, how are our recruitment efforts evolving to respond to these new threats? Or are we still pursuing the same types of individuals, same types of jobs that we were 10, 20 years ago? Are we still operating business as usual? And if we are, this is a problem. I have concerns being a taxpayer and not knowing if my little bit of money is being appropriated in the most prudent, practical, and strategic way. And I'm going to do some further digging. Like, I'm going to give the data around how our tax dollars are being spent. I'm going to dig deep into that when it comes to our military. And I will tell you this, being a part of, or being a former service member, a lot of what our Department of Defense invests in is not a high priority. It is not mission critical. It's very, very wasteful. And I just think maybe there needs to be some different accountability, or maybe just some other questions asked to our military and government leadership. I say this, that a lot of times people that are opposed to progressive change are typically the ones whose agendas benefit from the status quo. And anybody that knows me knows that I'm all about progressive change. All about it. And it's time for change. I mean, I would almost venture to say too, like from a recruitment standpoint, the same physical, behavioral, and cognitive attributes that correlated to a powerful and competent military force decades ago are not the same as what they are today. If we want to remain a world superpower, we've got to accelerate our change. And we've got to be willing to disrupt some tradition, disrupt some agendas that conflict with that change. It has to happen, or as a nation, we're going to be in danger. Just like any business out there that chose not to change or thought that they would be okay, and they weren't okay. I don't think that anything's going to, like, and our military's not going to go away, right? But something has to change. At least this is what I believe, right? Our military must figure out a way to better identify, qualify, attract, and retain a new breed of service member. Again, these are some of the same points that I'm reinforcing from this last talk. I talk to a lot of the recruiters. I know their pitch. I know the narrative. I know what they're going after. I know what they're looking for. And it's time for things to change, right? I think this new breed of service member must really be trained we need to look for people that are not trained just to follow orders, but people that have the ability and autonomy to think critically, creatively, and decisively, and be compensated accordingly. Another talk for another time, but the comp structure may be something that needs to be revised. Again, based on the demand, the need, the value of what today's military needs, what today's threat deterrence are. It may need to change. The other option is this. Maybe we should identify a segment of our military that's serving in roles that are declining in their value, roles that may have been valuable 10, 20 years ago, and start cross-training those to combat this new threat. So it's not just about recruitment, it's about internal readiness and upskilling or cross-skilling or whatever you want to call it. Some of the current service members, I know a lot of them, I know when I was in, a lot of folks wanted to cross-train into other roles, and it was so hard. It was so much red tape. We got to remove some of this and really focus on what truly, truly matters, right? I feel like we're paying soldiers sometimes to just remain on standby for a potential threat. For some roles are that way. And they never see combat. They never are in a situation where they're truly called on. I was one of those, to be honest. I was aircrew life support. I was never in a combat situation. I came in during peacetime. I think I came in right between Desert Storm and Desert Shield. Excuse me. And, we were just on standby. And again, we need that to a degree. We need those types of people to a degree. We need to stay ready, but I think we may be overdoing it there in some MOSs, some roles, right? We need to focus on addressing the current threat, not the potential of some old threat. The other thing I wanted to mention, this may be an opportunity for the private and public sector to join forces and work in a collaborative effort to protect our common interest versus functioning on a proverbial island. And that's the way it is a lot of times. The military wants to do their own thing. They don't want civilians involved. They don't want the private sector involved at all. And I'm sure there are various reasons for that, but some of it is to preserve tradition. We can't continue to function in silos when it comes to common interest, when it comes to something, or it comes to things as serious as this. right? This is really a major reason that I started WorldBridge, is to start bridging the gap between these two cultures, create a more collaborative infrastructure because it affects us all. So why are we so divided, right? Maybe some of the layers of red tape involved in the private and public sector working together has actually become a hidden barrier to our progress as a nation. We're stronger together, much stronger together. Some of the comparisons, like I look, it's always interesting, the comparisons between the public and private sector. You know, um, to me, it always seems that one side is so much slower than the other when it comes to change and innovation in certain areas. Private sector is so much faster, so much more nimble. They can pivot faster than our government. Doesn't have to be. We've just chosen um, to allow things to remain in that state, right? It always appears that one side is more concerned with tradition than progress. That's part of the problem. It also seems like one side seems to have an outdated and antiquated people and process infrastructure. Private sector is so much further ahead in a lot of ways, as far as how they lead, the process, their business processes. It's just different, right? And honestly, this is one of the constant hurdles that veterans face and things that they have to overcome when transitioning out of military culture. And I see it all the time. It's not that military members can't be taught the skills of the private sector. It's the cultural shift. It's the habitual and behavioral shift that is so difficult a lot of the times. The leadership structure, the way they execute, it's very, very different. And some people just can't make that change. I think we have to, it's like they, and I'm talking about veterans, we come from a very rigid, linear, traditional culture into a place that is much more nuanced and fast paced. Just, again, thought I'd throw that in there, but it's a problem that we got to fix. We've all got to fix this together, okay? We've got to figure out, and then again, this is just my opinion, we've got to figure out a way to start integrating military and civilian cultures in order to optimize our nation's strengths. The strength is us. The strength is the people. Regardless if you're on the public or private sector side, the strength of any business, the strength of any organization, the strength of any society is the people. And we've got to value those. And we can't be at odds and look at it like an adversarial position. I hear a lot of my veteran brothers and sisters talk about civilians like we're aliens or something. We're not like them. They don't think like us. They don't operate like us. Yeah, you're right. And we're not stuck like you either. And again, I'm not speaking from the standpoint of someone who did not serve, because I did. So I know both sides. And it's a shame that a lot has remained the same. We should be a lot further along than what we are right now, right? If we want to remain a global superpower, one of the keys is going to be a level of unification, not division. And I'm always opposed to practices and philosophies that promote division among people. As a society, we can be so much further along if we embraced a unified philosophy, a unified approach, and we valued diversity. We valued the functional diversity and the things that we bring to the table that are different, but could be tremendously beneficial. Okay? So at the end of the day, I mean, World Bridge, we're willing to roll up our sleeves. We're willing to do our part. The question is, who's willing to join us? Okay? I'm going to bring you more content like this. I'm going to try to do it weekly, if not bi-weekly. But it's time. It's time for change. If you want to join us in this change effort, you want to talk about this, let's start a discourse around this. If we don't, we're going to see more of the same. And I don't think any of us should get caught off guard because we decided and we chose to turn a blind eye. Okay. So again, if you want to work with us, if you want to talk about collaborating in any way, contact us at www.wbmilitarypartners.com. That's www.wbmilitarypartners.com if you want to discuss working together. But that's all I got. That's the end of this show, end of this session. Again, sorry that I couldn't bring another voice to the table. I really wanted to, but we're going to continue this discussion. It's not going to stop. But I wanted to highlight some things and hopefully bring some information to the table that some of us may not have been aware of, because awareness is the first step in change. Awareness, yes. Awareness is the first step in any type of deliberate and intentional change. We got to start there, but we don't want to stop there. Okay. So thank you guys for joining today. Again, if you want to reach us, it's wbmilitarypartners.com. Hope you guys have a great evening, a safe evening. And until I talk to you again, be blessed. Take care.